So it really just depends on what your body has been through, the stresses it's been through in its life. That's because aging isn't just about time. It's about what's happening inside your cells. And I really want to nail home this point because it's so drastically different for people and it's so malleable. It's actually very much in your hands what you can do about your biological age. An analogy might be of thinking of your body like a car. You could have two cars that are the same model year, but one that's been driven gently and had regular maintenance and been well taken care of, it's going to run smoother and last longer. The other car, even if it's the same age, might be through rough conditions, driven through snow, driven so hard and neglected, it's going to show its wear and tear faster. Welcome to the Longevity Show. I'm your host, Dr. Hillary Lynn. I'm a board-certified internal medicine physician, and I trained at Stanford and Columbia University. I practiced in many different venues, such as the VA, free clinics, and academic hospitals, and now I practice in my own virtual concierge clinic focused on longevity health. In longevity medicine, we focus on helping people live not only longer, but to live well and better during those longer years. And so what I bring to the Longevity Show are actionable science and tips and tricks that you can incorporate into your life without much trouble so that you can live a longer, fuller, healthier life. Today, we're going to be diving into an important topic, the biology of aging, why it matters, and how to slow it down. I've talked about this a few times on this show before, but today I'm going to do a deep dive into the topic. So this is the episode for you if you like to have foundational knowledge about biology, and also I throw in some actionable tips, so don't worry if you don't like getting too deep into the science. I make it practical as well. Now, if you're like most people, you might think that aging is all about gray hair and wrinkles. Isn't that right? Or the number of years since our birth. What I'm here to tell you is that aging is about so much more. It's about what's happening inside your body, even inside your cells. So your real age isn't your birthday. It's about something deeper happening at the cellular level. So today we're going to be talking about that cellular level. We're going to be talking about how to increase the health and optimal efficiency of that cellular function. So, and maybe grab some tea and get a snack of some berries. These are all fabulous anti-aging type snacks and drinks. And then let's dive into the biology of aging and why it matters. So let me ask you the question, how old do you feel? This is an important question because it may tell you more about how old you really are biologically than your actual age. And that's true. We see that people who are the same chronologic age, say you and a friend are both 50 years old. One of you might run marathons. Let's just say it's your friend who runs marathons, eats clean, meditates every day. Meanwhile, you feel overwhelmed with stress, poor sleep, and you haven't gotten to the gym in months. So even though chronologically you're both 40, biologically your bodies may actually be as far as decades apart. Decades. So that shocks a lot of people. It's not just a reality for certain celebrities whose names start with Brian and end with Son. It's all of us. We can be decades apart in terms of our chronological age as well as our bio age. So if you are 50, you might be actually biologically 30. And if you are 60, you could be actually 80. So it really just depends on what your body has been through, the stresses it's been through in its life. That's because aging isn't just about time. It's about what's happening inside your cells. And I really want to nail home this point because it's so drastically different for people and it's so malleable. It's actually very much in your hands what you can do about your biological age. An analogy might be of thinking of your body like a car. You could have two cars that are the same model year, but one that's been driven gently and had regular maintenance and been well taken care of, it's going to run smoother and last longer. The other car, even if it's the same age, might be through rough conditions, driven through snow, driven so hard and neglected, it's going to show its wear and tear faster. And unlike us, cars can't even maintain themselves, so that's a separate story. But I also want to mention that if you keep a car in a garage, it might actually simply break down. So that's the same thing with our bodies. You can't protect yourself from wear and tear by just sitting in a garage and not doing anything, because your body will actually just decline. It'll stop working. Same as a car that has not been driven ever, or very rarely. You want to use it well within its range of normal, exercise it so that we can challenge it, grow the resilience. That's the point of hormesis, which is the term that refers to the stress, the intentional stress of our body, the challenge of our body in certain ways to develop greater capacity to do that thing. Now let's talk a little bit about biological clocks. Biological clocks are not physical items. They're actually calculations that we do based on biometrics in our body. So biometrics in our body are different measurements you can take either through DNA measurement or through blood measurement or certain other functional tests that you can do. So biological clocks help us measure the wear and tear inside our body. One of the original and most popular ones is the Horvath clock, which looks at your DNA methylation patterns to predict how old your cells actually are. These markers can tell us whether you're aging faster or slower than expected. And here's the exciting part. You can influence this. So we're not just talking about avoiding disease, we're talking about extending the life that you spend feeling good. So what's going on under the hood? Well, aging is the result of a lot of things breaking down, but there are a few major mechanisms that we can really hone in on. Ones that research shows are at the heart of why our bodies age. Let me tell you a quick story. So imagine your body is a bustling city. The streets are your blood vessels. The buildings are organs, and there's power plants supplying energy to the city. Those are your mitochondria. The mitochondria are the power plants of the cell and of the body in general. Over time, things start to break down. The streets get potholes, some buildings get old and damaged, and the power plants don't work as efficiently. So let's talk about what the damage is. So in the city example, we have the environment, we've got wear and tear, we've got people running around, we've got environmental change, the weather. So we have different processes in our body, but you can imagine them as the same. Like some people ask me, like, why is it that the body has to break down? Like, can't the body just, fix itself as it's going? So if anybody understands entropy, we know that this is exceptionally difficult. The body is just going to accidentally miss things as it's maintaining itself over time. So unfortunately, this is a process that needs constant upkeep. Here are the main culprits for why the body wears down with age. Cellular senescence, number one. Imagine some of the city's buildings are no longer being used, but they aren't being torn down. They become kind of this eyesore. They're just run down. Maybe there's things falling off the building and it's dangerous. People can't even use them anymore. They're not up to code. These are like organs that are senescent or senescent cells, if you think of them as cells as well, the building blocks as cells. So you can refer to these as zombie cells. A lot of people refer to them as zombie cells. They stop dividing, so they're not growing, but they refuse to die. They just sit there, taking up space, causing trouble, releasing toxic chemicals into the environment around them, such as buildings that might be releasing toxic chemicals because there isn't upkeep of things that are stored inside. So it's kind of like that. So these zombie cells accumulate and then they start causing inflammation, which speeds up aging and onset of diseases like cancer and heart disease. Then we also have 2, telomere shortening. Now think of your DNA as a book. And that's very much what your DNA is, by the way. Your DNA is like a long code, a written code that tells your body what to do. It tells your cells how to replicate itself. And it tells, with the methylation and those epigenetic markers, tells your cells and your body how to vary the things that it's creating. That's why we've got the same DNA in your eyeball as in your liver, but these different signals will tell a certain cell to become an eyeball cell and another one to turn into a liver cell. There's a lot of complicated biology there. There's also cells that tell other cells nearby what to become. That's why one eyeball cell looks different than another depending on its location. It's really magical stuff, actually. But that aside, you can just think of your DNA as a long book. at the ends of the book, we've got these protective bookmarks called telomeres. You can actually think of them as the covers of the book, let's just say. Every time your cell divides, a little bit of these covers that get worn down. It's kind of like if you're taking the book out of a bookshelf at a library, imagine the book cover is quite thin, like it's a paperback book. And then the more you pull it out, there's going to be wear and tear, especially on the book covers. That's why book covers are covers. They're a little tougher. The same thing with the ends of our DNA. Because there's a lot of fraying and tearing at the ends of DNA, we need protective covers. Unfortunately, it also gets worn down as your cells divide. So if, like, every single time you're taking out a book, you're using it, you're throwing it around, these ends of your DNA called telomeres, they shorten. So the book at last may become at risk of falling apart. This causes your cells to either stop dividing, to become senescent, like those zombie cells, or they die. And I just want to mention that this is not necessarily a bad thing for specific cells. You want certain cells to die. Your body likes to recycle its cell parts and then they turn into new cells. So your body knows what to do with cells that have properly apoptosed. So those are cells that have died in the appropriate organized fashion that we have evolved to do. However, if you overall throughout your body seem to have shorter telomeres, that is a hallmark of aging. And studies do show that people with average longer telomeres tend to live longer. A quick note is that if you have infinitely long telomeres, then you might imagine, oh, will I just live forever? That's almost like a book, however, that has a really thick cover. It's just a showcase at that point. It's not really useful. You can't drag around a book with a gigantic cover. That's why most of us, I think, we like little paperbacks, and this is a side note, rather than like thick hardcover. Those are coffee books, right? You don't carry around coffee books. So same thing. If you have really infinitely long or just super long telomeres in cells, the cell becomes immortal. Immortal cells are not good, actually, because they continue to replicate forever. What cells replicate forever? Cancer cells. So there's a right balance. You want to have longer average telomeres, but you don't want any individual cell or group of cells to have infinitely long telomeres because then they would live forever. That's not great. So 3, the third way that we biologically age is due to mitochondrial dysfunction. So remember those power plants I mentioned? So those are mitochondria. They generate the energy your body needs and your cell needs to function. But as we age, mitochondria become less efficient. They generate more harmful byproducts like free radicals, which damage the body's infrastructure. So that's your cells. So you've got mitochondria in all of your cells, basically all of your cells. There's some exceptions, but they are there because it needs to generate energy so that your cell knows how to survive and live. So you need to have these power plants in your cells, and they do go out of date. So like real power plants, you may have certain power plants that produce more pollution than energy. And this is harmful to your body. It causes clouds of smog, and your body actually degrades because of that. So you want working power plants, working mitochondria. The pollution leads to your body wearing down. It leads to fatigue, reduced cellular function, and also faster aging. So these processes might sound really grim, but the exciting part is that we're learning how to slow them down and maybe even reverse some of them. So we're going to talk about this next, but I don't want to jump to that quite yet. Just know that we're going to talk about Geroprotectors and also Senolytics in later part of this episode. But before we get to that, let's talk about biological clocks, because they are key to understanding how fast or slow you're aging. So we started talking a little bit about biological clocks, but let's talk about more what they do. So biological clocks, they're not like physical clocks. They're not like the stuff that we wear on our watches, on our wrists. They're like diagnostic tools that tell us how old you are on the inside. So like having a barometer or like checking your car's mileage to see how much wear it's experienced, they're like that kind of a clock. The biological clocks check your body's internal mileage. So one of the most popular clocks is the Horvath clock, which measures changes in your DNA through a process called DNA methylation. So remember, we've talked about methylation as these little chemical tags that attach to your DNA and change how it behaves. As we age, these tags change in predictable ways, allowing us to measure biological age. So if you're wondering about why this matters, it's because you can reverse your biological age. If you're living a healthy lifestyle, exercising, eating well, managing stress, you might be 50 but have a biological age of a 25-year-old. But if you're not taking care of yourself, you might be 40 but with a biological age of 50 or 60. So understanding the factors that go into your biological age and some of the easier ways to measure using a biological clock that's more accessible will give you a powerful tool to measure the impact of lifestyle changes or interventions. So if we can track aging more precisely, we can also intervene earlier and with more precision to slow or even reverse age-related decline. As a quick note, I'll just mention that there's many biological clocks out there. There's many calculators out there. Without going into any specific one, I'm just going to say that none of them are perfect yet. None of them will probably ever be perfect. I think of them as accessibility. So you want to compare your telomere length, for example, to maybe your phenotypic age. You can get these through certain companies. Phenotypic age, you can actually calculate using some very common lab tests that you get from your routine lab panel from your doctor. So there's certain ones that you can just throw in your measurements into an online calculator. They're free of charge. You can do it on your own, or you can look to a commercial company if you want to do something more specialized, like looking at your telomere lengths. But without going deeply into that, just know that none of these are really great. So if you do one of these calculations and you get a number that you just don't know what to make of it, it's possible that it's not totally accurate. There's about a 7% variation even on the most common ones that use epigenetics, for example. So if you get a number, it could be like, 7% is practically 10% different. So that's a huge difference for a person's biological age. So I wouldn't worry about variance if you're checking it a few times. It's just to give you a ballpark idea. If you are sitting at age 30 and then you see 50, that's ballpark a lot higher than your chronological age. Same thing, if you are 60 and it says you're 40, fantastic. You are ballpark in the direction of younger than your chronological age. So you're doing something right, or you may just be lucky. So I always want to say, in the world of longevity, most of it is luck. Yes, there's a lot of stuff that you can do to fight whatever cards you're born with. So a lot of people are, unfortunately, they inherit genes that aren't very beneficial for their biological longevity. However, there's things you can do to reverse that. I say that because I don't want to place blame on anyone. A lot of people take it upon themselves, like, oh, I'm so biologically aged, like this is my fault in some way. And I'm here to say that it really isn't. There's a lot of things that's outside our control. For example, environmental factors, everything from additives in processed foods to our sedentary work lives, to even the environmental change and pollution. And something else I think is a little funny, but it's true. There was one of the oldest centenarians who just passed away. She said that her secret was avoiding toxic people. And I thought about that. I'm like, that is so true, because if you think about it, what stresses you out most of all? It's being around people who suck the energy away from you. It's not really anything else, because we're social creatures. And if we're around people who are bringing us down, whether it's through, antagonizing us purposefully, or I even know there's, if anybody knows what I'm talking about, send me a DM. But if you've heard of the term emotional vampire, I love that, because there's some people who are actually very well-meaning, but they will just suck the energy out of you. And if you notice that you're around a lot of people like this, you might be over-nurturing people. You might be taking care of people who seem to always have something going on in their life. And this is actually a very unhealthy dynamic. In my own life, I am a doctor, so I can have the separation. I try to make sure that when I'm helping somebody, I'm sitting in my doctor role and I help people all the time as a doctor. But in my personal life, you have to have boundaries. Like, you can't help everybody in the world. You want to help those you love, those closest in your circle, but you want to go with some reason. You need to protect yourself. If you don't protect your own energy and your own health and your time and emotions, then you won't be there for the people you love. So there's a circle of influence here that, I went off on a little sideways note, but I think it's important to nail home because we're talking about longevity. You want to enjoy the life that you have. You want to live as long as possible. A lot of that has to do with your social relationships. All right. So now that we know what's driving your aging and how to measure it, let's talk about I consider to be some of the fun stuff. Geroprotectors. So gero means old or aging, and protectors like geriatric, gero. Protectors, obviously protectors. So these are compounds or treatments that can actually slow down or protect against the processes of aging. So some of them might be already familiar to you, while others might sound completely new. So let me walk you through 3 of the most well-studied geroprotectors: rapamycin, metformin, and polyphenols. So let's talk about rapamycin. This is a personal favorite of mine. As full disclosure, I do myself treat patients with rapamycin. I do take rapamycin myself. It is off-label use, so don't go ahead and try to source it yourself without guidance. I recommend everybody who's taking rapamycin do so hand in hand with your doctor, particularly with a longevity physician who understands how to use rapamycin. So this is not a DIY exercise. You want to talk about it with a physician who understands you and your health and life goals. That being said, I think it's fantastic. So let's talk about what rapamycin is and how to understand it. Rapamycin is a little bit like a mechanic in your body. So instead of fixing broken parts by putting them together, it actually slows down wear and tear, and it also helps with that recycling process that we talked about. You know how I said when an old cell dies, your body recycles its parts and then it puts it away. So it's a cleaning or pruning type of an exercise. It's almost like a gardener. You're taking away those weeds, you're pruning away the nasty parts of plants. I've got to do that in my office. Some people who have maybe noticed in my past episodes and watch me in my visual recorded episodes have noticed that the plant behind me has died. I need to get rid of it. I need to apply some autophagy to my workspace. So in your body, you have this going on all the time. And what rapamycin does is it inhibits something called the mTOR pathway. mTOR, you don't have to worry too much about what this means. It's the mammalian target of rapamycin. So it's a little bit circular. They actually discovered that rapamycin directly impacts this pathway, and then they named the pathway after rapamycin. So just don't get too confused. It's the mTOR pathway. This regulates growth and aging. So when you're young, you need mTOR to be super active. You're growing. It's anabolic. So you're growing and dividing, growing and dividing. But as you're getting older, too much mTOR activity speeds up aging. You're no longer growing up, you're kind of growing old. So that's how you can think about it. So think about it as driving a car at full speed all the time. You want to, get started in the beginning. That's why to go from stop to go, you have to accelerate a huge amount, 100%. But when you are already going, you want to go at a proper speed. And you might want to stop and then go every so often. That's how we use rapamycin, actually. You don't want to be at full speed all the time. You'll wear yourself out. You will age faster. So the car, you're going to wear out the brakes. You're going to wear out everything about it. So that's a similar analogy. Rapamycin is a way to take a pause. It's almost like parking your car so that it can get juiced up. You say you have an electric car. So it's a little bit like that. You want to park the car every so often, or even just take a break. And that's how we dose rapamycin. That's a theory behind the longevity off-label use of rapamycin, is that we give people rapamycin on interval periods, intermittently. So most commonly people do it once a week. It's honestly because it's easy to remember. And by the end of 7 days, you certainly have cleared out all of the rapamycin. You have to get a blood test to actually see how fast you clear out rapamycin. Everybody is different. It's kind of like with any other compound For example, with caffeine, I've mentioned this before, my partner, he can drink a cup of coffee an hour before he goes to sleep and he's fine. I need to wait 12 hours and to be totally sure that I'm going to be able to sleep. So I'm a slow metabolizer of many different things. It has to do with enzymes in my liver and the rest of my body. And same thing with a lot of people out there. If you're ever truly curious about it, there's tests called pharmacogenomic tests that can help you understand which of your enzymes are a certain type that help you metabolize certain things faster or slower. But a lot of clinical practice is trial by error. So I don't actually, in reality, test everybody for pharmacogenomics because we often find the answer pretty quickly when you take a certain drug and you feel a certain way. So rapamycin, it's like a way of giving your body a break. It tells your body to slow down, conserve energy, and focus on repair instead of constant growth. It's like taking a nap or sleeping at nighttime. So we do have many studies showing that rapamycin extends lifespan in mice, and in humans, it's been shown to improve immune function in older adults and reduce markers of aging in the skin. In addition, I'm really excited about this, but the pilot study for the Vibrant study done at Columbia to help preserve ovarian reserve in women who are suffering from premature ovarian insufficiency has some preliminary results showing that rapamycin does work in this scenario. So why did they choose this? Two big reasons. One is that humans, obviously, if we studied humans for longevity, we'd have to wait lifetimes to see results. And that's way too slow. So we use animal models frequently to be a substitute. And also we use biomarkers. In this case, they're using something, a test, the AMH test, anti-Mullerian hormone test, to tell whether their ovaries in these women who are in the study are aging faster or slower. And because our AMH changes from month to month pretty significantly, like it's a decimal point kind of a thing, but it changes enough that you can actually measure it at 3 or 6 months and you'll see a major difference. And that's what they have seen so far in the pilot preprint reviews of this subject population. They're doing a much longer study. It's going to be many years long, but I just thought that was exciting to mention. Of course, second of all, we care a lot. We're living in a world where many people want to have children later and later. And so there's that thought that if we gave women something like rapamycin to preserve your ovarian function for much longer, then you could go into your 40s with healthy fertility and go on to have children. I want to put a big caveat here is that we haven't done those full studies and we haven't done this and then seen what happens to the babies when they come out. So there's some people who are very cautious about it. I'm more optimistic because we actually have a lot of patients who have taken much higher doses of rapamycin on a daily frequency. And this is done for organ transplantation because when you have high doses of rapamycin, it becomes an immunosuppressant. It is not really an immunosuppressant with the intermittent dosing. So just in case anyone's wondering, you do need a pretty high dose in your blood levels. So it needs to be more frequent at a higher dose for it to become an immunosuppressant. But we do have many examples of that in real life where we have seen that people who have been immunosuppressed purposefully due to organ transplants, they go on to have healthy children. And so it does seem that rapamycin isn't causing issues there, but I do want to caution everyone, we don't have the full studies for this off-label use of longevity or ovarian preservation quite yet. So we need to see all the studies come out, but I'm very excited. All right, so it is one of the most exciting things, so I spent a little extra time. Next up, let's talk about a drug that many of you have heard of, Metformin. So this drug has been used to treat type 2 diabetes for decades. The kicker is it might be also a potent anti-aging drug. So metformin works by activating something called the AMP kinase, which you can think of as your cell's energy regulator. So it boosts energy production, it improves glucose metabolism, and it induces autophagy. That's that same word we mentioned before, your body's way of cleaning out the damaged cells, doing that recycling process. So it's a totally different mechanism from what we just spoke about with rapamycin. It's with AMPK, but similarly, it helps with the autophagy process. It additionally seems to help with glucose metabolism. That's why we give it to people with diabetes, and it's very helpful to the extent that we believe it may improve longevity. In studies, people on metformin have lower risks of cardiovascular disease, cancer, and even neurodegeneration. There's an ongoing trial called TAME trial, and it's investigating whether metformin could be officially classified as an anti-aging drug. This is a big deal because in the longevity world, we don't have a lot of official anti-aging trials, and this is because of how trials are funded. Typically, there's different categories that funding bodies will put money into, and it usually has to be a diagnosis, a disease of some sort. So like Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, a type of cancer, or even diabetes itself. And so when drugs get approved, they get approved for certain disease states. However, there's a lot of debate about whether aging should be classified as a disease state. It's very normal, and we are all aging. So would we all have this supposed disease? So that's a big question mark. Some people say yes, so that we can get more proper funding for it. Some other people say no, because it would offer a lot of stigma for a universal concept that we're all undergoing. So I don't really care, is my personal opinion, and it doesn't matter to me if it's considered a disease diagnosis or not. I do think that it is a process that we should tackle more with our science and with interventions. Going back to metformin, think about metformin as a housekeeper. So it's a housekeeper that sweeps out all the old damaged materials in your cells so that the body can run more efficiently. It is one of the most studied geroprotectors, and there's strong evidence to support its use for longevity. That being said, I don't put everybody on metformin, and there's a reason for this. It's because there haven't been as many studies showing that metformin actually extends life. It's really interesting. So in rapamycin, we've had so many animal studies in yeast as well, and some suggestion in human studies that it truly does do something for the anti-aging reversal and the longevity lifespan for these animal studies. But metformin hasn't shown the same thing, and it's really interesting. It's theoretically quite beneficial, and it's very, very safe. We've used it across millions and millions and millions of people without great harm. The only thing that I will mention for people who are on metformin for long term, it does do something to our body's ability to absorb certain vitamins. So just make sure that your B vitamins, particularly B12, are being screened for when you get your lab tests. You may need to supplement if you are on metformin for years and years. That's the same also for certain other drugs like proton pump inhibitors like omeprazole. If you're somebody with heartburn and you take these types of drugs, you may need to take a look at your B vitamin levels and make sure that you're supplementing where necessary. So just a side note. So anyways, metformin has a lot of theoretic benefit, but it just hasn't been nearly as proven in the clinical world. We do know that it's safe, so I will say, if somebody wants to be on it, that's great. But it's like, if you're choosing between metformin or exercising more, I would exercise more because that definitely shows some benefit. Whereas metformin, it's like, okay, it's a pill. If you're not exercising, probably it's going to do better than nothing. But, I would choose that you go ahead and do regular exercise instead if possible. So the next topic we're going to talk about is something that you've probably heard of before. So let's talk about polyphenols. Polyphenols are a really interesting group of molecules, and they're found in a lot of natural foods. So this is why I love this topic. It's not a drug necessarily. They are making drugs out there. I've seen polyphenol boosters and things like that, but really you can get your proper amount of polyphenols through just eating a healthy plant-based diet even. So it's found in a lot of fruits and veggies. So let's start with this analogy. Imagine that there are small fires breaking out in your body every day. So these fires are being caused by things like oxidative stress and inflammation. If left unchecked, these fires start damaging your cells, your DNA, and even your mitochondria. This leads to faster aging and the onset of diseases like heart disease, diabetes, and even cognitive decline. So here's where polyphenols come in. They act like a squad of firefighters rushing in around your body. They put out these little fires before they cause too much damage. By neutralizing free radicals from oxidative damage and reducing inflammation, your polyphenols can help keep your cells healthy, which in turn slows down the aging process. But that's not all. Polyphenols also interact with cell signaling pathways that regulate cell growth and survival. So they actually switch on genes that promote longevity and switch off genes that promote inflammation and cell death. So remember I said that epigenetics means on top of your genes. So we are all born with our genes. That is something that until we figure out gene editing to a much more proven level, we're not going to be able to change our genes. However, you can change the signals on top of your genes that tell your body what to do. So certain signals will promote longevity and others will promote inflammation, yet others will promote cell death. You need balance of all of these things. So like I've mentioned, there's no pure badness. You do need some inflammation sometimes. Inflammation is what helps us fight infection. So things like COVID or even an acute injury. If you are injured, there's a reason why that part of your body gets red hot and swollen. You do need it to help with healing in the initial period. Too much inflammation is problematic. You don't want chronically elevated levels of inflammation because that can lead to problems like, people who suffer from joint pain or headaches, brain fog, or have full out autoimmune disease. You've felt chronically elevated inflammation, and that's not good either. So we need a right balance of that. And we also need a right balance of cell death. Like I've mentioned, you don't want all of your cells to live forever. That would be terrible. You would have cancers all over the body. But you do want a proper cycle for cells. Cells, you don't have to think of them. They're not like humans. They don't have personalities and feelings. They are there simply to support our body's survival. So we need each individual cell to live its requisite amount of time and then die so that its parts can get recycled or cleaned up or and waste gets thrown away. So this is very helpful to understand. Polyphenols essentially help our body maintain balance, which is crucial for healthy aging. A lot of people talk about the blue zones, and I just wanted to briefly mention blue zones because it's so well known, popular in popular media. So blue zones are places like the Mediterranean and like Ikaria and Greece and then Loma Linda. So there's a lot of places, Okinawa in Japan. So but just to mention this in the context of polyphenols, let's just say you have a older man in the Mediterranean. So for example, in Sardinia, a lot of people there live much longer lives than we do here, and they live happy, less stressful lives. So into their 90s, even their hundreds. And a lot of times they have farms or they're growing their own foods, and every evening they're also enjoying some wine. A little quick note about wine is that even though it does have polyphenols, it also has alcohol, and alcohol is not good for you. So I think people in sort of these more traditional cultures who drink a lot of wine, yes, they might be getting a little bit of benefit, but they're also having so much benefit from the rest of their lives and genetics that they're actually fighting the damage that's being done to them from the alcohol. But needless to say, these people living in these more traditional blue zones, they have a lot more polyphenols in their diet. So everything from grape skin to the greens to all sorts of fruits and veggies, they activate the same pathways triggered by caloric restriction. So caloric restriction is exactly what it sounds like. It's restricting calories to a very low amount. So there's not a strict definition, but in humans, we usually say caloric restrictions below 1,000 calories a day or even below 800 in some people's cases. So it depends on your size, of course, and how many calories you burn through living activities. We've studied caloric restriction in other animals, such as yeast and also in mice, and it does seem to help with longevity. However, I don't know any humans who have done caloric restriction to the extreme levels necessary to extend life and been able to live a proper life. It's just really, really hard for humans. So it's not a realistic intervention. And you also reverse the advantage the moment you stop calorie restricting. So this is something you'd have to do every single day for the rest of your life. So most people don't want to sign up for that, and I know I don't. So getting your polyphenols can also introduce the benefits of caloric restriction without having to calorically restrict. Some of the elements that in blue zones we see, so we talk about the Mediterranean diet a lot. It introduces a lot of olive oil, which is packed with hydroxytyrosol. It's a powerful polyphenol. And if you get nuts, almonds contain quercetin. So almonds contain quercetin, which is yet another polyphenol, which helps fight inflammation and support cellular health. So you could tell that This is not an extreme diet, and people in the blue zones, they're not doing anything extreme like taking supplements or drugs that do anything terribly different to their bodies than you might expect. It's more that they are protected from insults to their health and body. They live in a world largely without technology to really impact their mental health. And they also have a very natural life. They're living with the land. They're eating plant-based foods and lots of fatty fish as well for people who eat meat. And that's all related to healthy aging. There's so many polyphenols in all of those plants. And because plants in this type of region, in the blue zones, they're not infiltrated with pesticides and other types of alterations. So you get a much cleaner lifestyle that can benefit you. So you might be wondering how to add more polyphenols into my diet. So I've mentioned a few things, but just to review a couple of them. So resveratrol. This is a controversial one because, it was studied in yeast and it turned out not to be actually that helpful in follow-up studies. That being said, it is potentially helpful, so I'm going to mention it, and a lot of people ask me about it. So it is found in the skin of fruits like grapes. It's also found in peanuts. It can activate sirtuins, a family of proteins, which incidentally is something I studied in my earliest research days. When I was literally in high school, my very first research lab that I was participating in was working on sirtuins. So that was fun. It was a yeast lab. So again, it may or may not be helpful in humans, but you do find it in the skins of grapes and in peanuts. So, and quercetin, this is a lot more well studied. Quercetin is found in foods like onions, apples, and berries. So it has anti-inflammatory properties and it's considered a senolytic. So this is a big topic that we're going to talk about as well. Senolytics help clear out senescent or those zombie cells. So senescent cells do contribute to aging, so getting rid of them can really help slow down the process. So quercetin, so remember that one because that is very promising. It's found in natural foods, and people do also take it as an interventional pill, but really you can find it in foods. Again, like berries, love berries, onions, love onions, and also apples. Apples are kind of sugary. You want to be careful with how many apples you're eating, but apples are great. Eat the skins. Don't eat apple juice or drink apple juice. It's got too much sugar and none of the fiber and good stuff. So then we have curcumin. So found in turmeric, curcumin has been shown to reduce inflammation and oxidative stress. Fun fact, I have a friend who came and celebrated my birthday with me and gave me a bag of turmeric. And I was like, oh, this is fantastic. I'm not a great cook, I'll be fully honest, but they told me a little bit about how to use it in foods. And I'm like, okay, this is great. So the next time I get a chance, I'm going to be throwing turmeric in a lot of things. So curcumin is the compound in it that helps to reduce inflammation and oxidative stress. It's been widely studied for its effects on cognitive health and longevity. So you can add it simply to your cooking, or you can take it as a supplement. It's a great way to support healthy aging. All right, this one is a little hard to pronounce. So epigallocatechin gallate, EGCG. I butchered that one. EGCG, you can just remember this polyphenol. It's what gives green tea its superstar status. So if anybody out there love tea, this is good news for you. Of course, be careful. Try and get organic teas because tea leaves are really thin. It absorbs all of those pesticides. So you just want to be a little bit careful, but love green tea. It's so helpful. So EGCG is a powerful antioxidant that has been shown to support heart health, brain function, and longevity. Green tea is also linked to the reduced risk of cancer and cardiovascular diseases, making it a must-have in your daily routine, or if you don't love tea, there's other sources of it, but really largely we see it in green tea. So luteolin. So this is a polyphenol that's found in peppers, carrots, and celery. So love this. So we're getting specific about different types of vegetables. So go for it. So luteolin is a flavonoid that has been shown to reduce oxidative stress and extend lifespan in model organisms. It also boosts something called NRF2. NRF2 is a protein that helps your cells defend against stress. So we're strengthening that shield. So peppers, carrots, and celery have luteolin, which helps your cells defend against stress. So you don't have to overhaul your entire diet. Just make a few simple changes. You could start your day with some green tea to get your EGCG, or if you are a big coffee addict, you can get some coffee and green tea. You could do that. There's some evidence too for dark chocolate. So you have to get really dark chocolate, none of this milk chocolate business that my partner loves. Milk chocolate is basically sugar. Fun fact, don't test it on your dog, but milk chocolate is actually so low on cacao that it doesn't really hurt dogs as much. So dogs could theoretically eat milk chocolate without as many issues. I don't recommend trying it out because different dogs may have different sensitivities. But dark chocolate is where it's at. You need that cacao in it. So 70% or even 100% cacao. My partner thinks I'm a monster for when I ever take out the 100% cacao. It's really bitter. But you get used to it. You could throw it a little bit into your smoothies, like cacao nibs are fantastic in your smoothies or yogurt. It's so good. I'm just talking about it makes my mouth water. I'm going to make some later. And it's packed with polyphenols, particularly flavonoids like catechins and epicatechins, which support heart health. So it's so delicious and it's really good for you. So dark chocolate all the way. You could also add your berries to your breakfast. So I keep talking about berries, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. These berries in their skins have a lot of these polyphenols. So just add them to your yogurt, oatmeal, or smoothie. Great way to increase your polyphenol intake. And cook with extra virgin olive oil. So I use olive oil for basically everything. Sometimes I use flaxseed oil, but basically olive oil, everything. I use it as a dressing for my salads, sauteing my vegetables, drizzling over cooked foods. It's one of the most richest sources of polyphenols in diets like the Mediterranean diet. And also we've shown it's so beneficial in so many ways. So go for extra virgin olive oil if you can. Go for organic if you can. But cook it, drizzle it everywhere. It's fantastic. I talked about turmeric in cooking. So you can add a pinch into your soups, curries, or even just throw it in your smoothies and lattes. And some of you might have seen turmeric lattes in the shop. You can make that at home. You can also pair it with black pepper. There's some evidence that you can enhance the absorption of polyphenols, like in turmeric, to enhance absorption. So just a little small tip too. So again, polyphenols are like a natural defense system that helps your body fight off the effects of aging. By incorporating these foods into your daily routine, you're going to give your cells the tools they need to stay healthy, fight inflammation, and reduce oxidative damage. And again, these are not exotic, hard to find superfoods. You can find these in local grocery stores or your farmer's market. So just reach for the olive oil or the chocolate. You're eating not only for today, you're eating for your future self. Share it with all of your friends and family. I think this is such an important part of our topic today because of how deep we go into practical ways that you can reverse your biological age. So we're also going to talk about senolytics. We've talked about the importance of biological clocks and the benefits of polyphenols and some geroprotectors, but I want to introduce you to one of the most exciting developments in longevity science, which is that of senolytics. So senolytics, they clean out the zombie cells. Remember those zombie cells I was talking about? It's like your buildings, your cells are wearing down. If you've ever seen a zombie movie, you know that the undead are a major problem. They don't die, they don't function properly, they're causing chaos around them. So these zombie cells are senescent cells. They are cells that stop dividing, they refuse to die, they lurk around. Usually when a cell reaches this phase, it undergoes a process called apoptosis. Apoptosis is programmed cell death. It's programmed because we've all evolved, every animal, we've all evolved for it to work in a way such that we get rid of cells that are not good anymore, and then we recycle those parts and we turn them into new cells. So when this isn't working, they're just sitting there kind of rotting, kind of like zombies, and they release inflammatory signals that cause damage to nearby healthy cells. So not only are they sitting around taking up space, they actually damage nearby healthy cells. It's kind of like those emotional vampires, right? So I love that analogy. So if you have a broken down car in the middle of a busy highway, that's kind of like a senescent cell that is blocking the roadway. It's polluting the environment. It's causing damage to other cars. Over time, it becomes like that zombie movie where you've got these like dead highways with all these broken down cars, and then now you've got like zombies attacking you from everywhere. So this is chronic inflammation when you've got all of this stuff going on. It's all messy. There's too much stuff going on in one place. It's not cleaned up. It's not organized. Your body needs organization to work efficiently and well. And also you get tissue damage, progression of age-related diseases like cancer, cardiovascular disease, and even Alzheimer's dementia. So this is really important. So that's senescent cells. Now let's talk about senolytics. Senolytics are compounds designed to selectively target and they eliminate senescent cells. Think of them as your body's cleanup crew, sweeping up the zombie cells that are causing inflammation and damage. So picture that you are cleaning out an old cluttered room in your house. So some things still work fine, but there's a lot of junk, broken appliances, and stuff, old furniture. You don't need this anymore. So the clutter is making it hard to work around. It's even attracting pests that like to hide in that clutter. So you need to straighten up, as my partner says. My partner is the clean one in my household. I am the, as long as I put on blinders, I'm fine partner in the household. So he says, you have to start by straightening up. He says, I don't clean properly. I'm always trying to clean off a certain surface. I'm cleaning off this little tiny area of my table that I can eat on, and I just spray it and wipe it down. And he's like, this is crazy talk, is what he says. He always has to go and clean the entire house. You have to sort things away, put it in the closet, and then you do things like vacuum, wiping, and so forth. So he's probably right. I'm just not very good at cleaning, it turns out. But senolytics, they clear out the junk cells. So then other tissues can function properly. They can do the more minute cleanup and function. So they're showing great promise in animal studies and early human trials for reducing the burden of zombie cells and reversing some of those negative effects of aging. So by clearing out these senescent cells, senolytics may help reduce inflammation, improve your tissue health, and even enhance your lifespan. How do senolytics work? Senolytics are designed to selectively target markers that are unique to senescent cells and sets them apart from healthy cells. There are markers. So it's kind of like how you can identify a zombie. You're like, okay, drooling, missing a limb, kind of rotting away, that's a zombie. So senolytics also target zombie cells. They know how to do that. They have recognition of what makes a cell a rotting cell. So one of the most well-known senolytics is a combination of dasatinib, which is actually an anti-cancer drug. So it's something we use to fight cancer, and quercetin. So remember we talked about quercetin as a natural polyphenol found in apples and onions. So this combination has been shown to reduce senescent cell burden in studies and improve tissue health in animal models. It's even been used in small human trials to treat diseases like idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, a condition often linked to the buildup of senescent cells. I have a friend whose parent has IPF, and it is a devastating and very confusing condition because we don't currently have any great treatments for it, and it leads to eventual need for a lung transplant, and then even after that there's unfortunately early death due to it. So I think for conditions like this where we don't have great options, so not just IPF, Alzheimer's dementia, Parkinson's disease, many neurodegenerative diseases actually. So even though we have sort of treatments for their symptoms, and we have certain treatments that help stave off some of the decline, I think by tackling the aging process with senolytics, this is a very, very big theory in the longevity world, is that by tackling the aging process, we will actually be able to reverse some of that decline, even without specifically attacking that specific process. So that is the promise and the hope of the longevity field, is that by tackling aging itself, we will be able to heal people from really devastating diseases that don't have great medications. So in trials, people treated with senolytics did show improvements in lung function. So this is going back to the IPF patients. So this does suggest that clearing out senescent cells can help with conditions tied to aging and inflammation. There's also fisetin. Fisetin is another natural compound. It's found in strawberries, apples, and cucumbers. And this has shown senolytic properties in animal studies. So fisetin seems to target senescent cells and remove them while promoting healthier cellular environments. So what's the big deal? Why should you care again about these zombie cells? They reduce so many problems, and that is why. So number one, we reduce inflammation. As we age, low-grade inflammation becomes more common. I've spoken before about inflammaging, and that is a major driver of many chronic diseases. Senescent cells are a little like inflammatory factories, so they release harmful molecules that trigger your immune system. Removing them helps reduce overall inflammation, making your tissues healthier and potentially lowering your risk of diseases like heart disease, diabetes, and Alzheimer's. Two, we want to have improved tissue health. So senescent cells build up in tissues like your skin, your joints, and muscles, leading to age-related damage. By clearing them out, senolytics can rejuvenate these tissues, improving skin elasticity, reducing joint pain, and even enhancing muscle recovery. Some animal studies have shown that treating aging mice with senolytics actually improves their physical function and resilience. So all those polyphenols, the quercetin, the dasatinib that I've been talking about, that might help you feel like going to the gym, even if you're chronologically older. It's going to improve your energy because your body's just working more efficiently. Finally, in animal models, senolytics have been shown to extend your lifespan. So reducing the number of dysfunctional cells, senolytics help keep tissues functioning better for longer. And we are still waiting again for those longer term human studies, but again, it's so hard to study humans because we'd have to wait a lifetime to see what happened. But the potential for senolytics to improve health span and even extend lifespan is exciting enough that I think everybody should know about this. A lot of the drugs being used are being repurposed from other areas, so we know their safety. And we also understand that certain things found in natural foods like the quercetin, the fisetin, these are found in natural foods, so you can just eat lots of these and feel a lot better. So today we talked about a lot of things. So we talked about biological age. We talked about how to test for your biological age, telomeres. We talked about epigenetics, and we talked about geroprotectors such as rapamycin, metformin, and polyphenols. And we talked about senolytics such as quercetin, dasatinib, and fisetin. So this was a huge topic. Thank you for listening all the way to the end if you have, because this topic is the foundation for so many things in longevity medicine. So thank you again for listening to the Longevity Show. I'm Dr. Hilary Lynn, and I will see you next time.